in the city of Marble Falls and the area around it. On our panel tonight, Judge Gil Jones will be the moderator and will keep order here in our little court. Drew Crosby, who is the New York Life agent in Horseshoe Bay and also a member of the Toastmasters Club, Marble Falls, will be keeping the time. And of course, I also want to thank people from the Highlander staff who have come here this evening to help us provide this forum for you. Now, I'll turn things over to Phil Schock, who is our executive editor of the Highlander and its associated newspapers, and ask him to continue to put the forum in motion.
Thank you, Roy. Judge, do you want to go ahead and explain the rules?
All right. Candidates, as we go through this, there are sections where there are 2-minute time limits. Your opening and closing remarks will be 2 minutes. You'll get a warning at 1.5 minutes. Mr. Crosby will flash you with a piece of paper. You'll get another warning when you have 10 seconds to go. And because we had a little difficulty last time shutting down a few of the candidates, I brought the big artillery.
Just in case.
Now, you may mistakenly think because I have this striker plate that it's intended to strike the plate. But if you see me approaching, please place your hand out and I will shut you down. You have some 1-minute questions and you'll get just a 10-second warning with that. When you have reached your time limit, Mr. Crosby will hold his pad up and keep it up. You may finish the sentence that you're in, please not the paragraph that you're in. All right, sir.
Okay, we're about to begin then with the opening statements. We'll go ballot order. We'll start with the mayoral candidates. Mr. Russell.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. All right, yeah. First of all, I want to say thank you to the Highlander staff and the Chamber and the River City Grill for putting on this event, and to Gil and Drew for putting up with us. But most of all, thank you for having enough interest in city government here to attend tonight. I do appreciate that. I just simply want to say that the people that you see sitting before you have a task ahead of them. Anybody that you elect for the next term that we have are going to have to face some very serious problems within the city of Marble Falls. Don't mean to be an alarmist, but with a slumping economy, there are many, many issues that hit the city, and it also hit the businesses within the area. They need to figure out a way to rebuild the reserves within the city and remove the watch that's on our bond rating. They need to handle a mandated update of our water plant. And we need to make certain that any project that we look at within the city blends with the comprehensive plan that was approved. And the wild card in the scenario is anything that's going to be passed down to the city from the feds, the state, and maybe even the county. We don't know what that is yet, but that's going to have to be rolled into the city budget. And it's getting to be more and more important to develop strategic partners with our neighbors, with organizations to solve, because the city no longer can do everything for everybody. I made a list of some of the strategic issues a few weeks ago, and I was totally amazed at the volume and the complexity of these issues. I need to close by just simply saying that based on my experience of over 10 years, of which 10 years were in city management, I feel that I have the knowledge and the experience to work with whatever council that you elect to address these complex issues ahead of us.
Thank you. Mr. Butcher.
Thanks to all of you for giving us this opportunity to come before the citizens and express our points of view for the upcoming election. I've lived in Marble Falls since 1990, with the exception of 6 years that I spent in Nashville, Tennessee. And from 2703. Operate the Art Bar and Grill and volunteer my time at the Uptown Theater. I'd like to just outline a couple of basic things that I consider my platform. The number one thing that I would like to have is transparency. I propose to put the city's checkbook online. I want to encourage greater council participation in the day-to-day business. I'd like to see the Mayor Pro Tem on a revolving weekly basis and involve the other councilmen on a weekly basis too, so that everybody has a better idea of what happens in city government. I want to reevaluate the funding levels for the police, fire, and EMS to an average for comparable cities in our region. I think that we're way out of line in several things, and there are great dollars involved, of which we have scarce tools to use in the future here. And so in that regard, I feel like that we need to reprioritize our street budgets. I'd like to see us double that street budget. It's something that everybody uses and what shows off our town. And I would reemphasize the redevelopment of downtown, our lakeside areas, and the west side. These are our community roots and reflect on our city and our citizens.
All right, thank you. Mr. Nash?
Thank you, Judge Jones. I also want to thank Roy and his staff at the Highlander and everyone here that attended tonight to give us this opportunity to have this forum and get to know your candidates a little bit better. I'm new to city politics and to this arena, so I would start by telling you a little bit more about myself. I'm a lifelong resident here. I'm 31 years old. I have a family, 3 kids, a business on Main Street, and also a construction and development business in the area. I've lived here my entire life. I have kids in the school system here. So I consider myself a large stakeholder in the community and its future. I want to see it succeed. I think it has great opportunities to succeed. We need to do some serious planning now to put ourselves in a position to take advantage of the opportunities as the economy turns around. Some of the things I'd like to see happen if I'm on this council would be improvement to existing infrastructure, making strides to meet the comprehensive plan that the council of a few years ago worked so hard to put together, and also making plans and continually monitoring those plans to put ourselves in a position to really take advantage of the opportunity that I think the city has with the tremendous growth that we're going to see over the next 10 to 15 years. I have with my construction and development background, I think that will serve me really well on this council. As it grows, construction and development is going to be a major part of the city's growth that needs to be managed and controlled well. So I look forward to doing that and putting that to work for me if I'm elected.
Thank you. You all are doing real well on the time. Ms. Rise?
Thank you, Judge, and thank you again to Roy Bodie and the staff at the Highlander, as well as Paul and River City Grill for putting this forum together and sponsoring it for us this evening. I also want to thank the voters of Marble Falls for not only coming out tonight, but for electing me to my first 2-year term 2 years ago. And it's been my privilege to serve on the City Council for this period of time. We have had some very tough decisions to make in the last 2 years, and we will have many more very serious, very tough issues, as Mayor Russell has already pointed out some of those points. As an optimist, though, I'd like to point out some of the victories we've had in the last couple of years. We've finalized the comprehensive plan. We have formed the Capital Improvement Plan Committee. We formed the HOT Committee, the Hotel Occupancy Tax Committee. We've approved a contract to advertise tourism in the area, starting the Downtown Master Plan Committee that is currently at work. We assisted to get the bridge project started. That's a $24 million TxDOT project here in town that you're well aware of. We completed the water line to the new hospital, and we approved the 2 largest zoning requests in the city's history. So those have just been some of the victories that we've accomplished in the last couple of years. And budget concerns are always probably a daily concern. I know it is for our city manager and the staff, but it's something that's going to need to be more and more concerning to each of us, not only as council members, but as citizens. I would caution you to use your votes wisely, to find the folks that have the experience that you feel is necessary to move forward. And I hope you'll find that I'm one of those folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hurst.
Thank you, Judge Jones. Thanks to the Highlander and River City Grill and the Chamber. We really appreciate y'all putting this on and the opportunity to share our viewpoints on why we can be leaders of this community and participate in a positive way. I want to thank Councilmember Ives. He said that there's a number of people here that for y'all to use your hearts and vote for those that have the experience, and I think I'm one of those. Thank you very much. The involvement that I've been in the city on the Planning and Zoning Board, as well as part of the members of the Comprehensive Planning Committee, have led me to have a lot of insight on where the city's been, what the city's gone through, and the potential of what we can go through. We work very hard on that, and I feel privileged to have been a part of that. Share with y'all, some of y'all that don't know me, I am a parent first. I am a business owner. I have opened up a number of businesses successfully and continued in that regard. My husband and I moved here in 2000 and embraced this community and invested quite a bit in that. And that's where my heart lies, in seeing the asset, the jewels that are here, and building off of that. One of the things that we need to be mindful of as we go forward is our budget and our spending. I think the staff has done a good job, especially in this past year, of cutting down and embracing where they can be physically minded in that regard, and we can build off of those successes, as Councilmember Ives has pointed out as well. I would like to see that we do more for maintaining and improving our existing roads and the original part of the city. That includes the historic parts as well, the parks. Excuse me?
Time.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to pick up in the closing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Rhodes.
Thank you, Judge. Also, thank you, Highlander, and those that have sponsored here tonight. I think it's important to point out, too, that the real definite importance of what has been promoted here, it goes far deeper than what's apparent. The local sponsors are underwriting our very democracy that is represented here tonight, and again, I say thank you. I'm a 16-year resident of Marble Falls, and I have witnessed a lot of changes. Having moved here in the summer of 1995 with a lot of other folks, it became apparent to me that Marble Falls was going to be inundated with growth. I think we've all seen that over the last 15, 16 years. And it was also apparent that we probably weren't prepared for a lot of that growth. Having the opportunity to have grown up and experienced as an adult a very large metropolitan area, having moved here from that, it's not so much what you want to do, but what you don't want to do. And I had the opportunity to bring those kind of thoughts to the apparent to the forefront during those early council times. I'm a firm believer that there is a balance to be struck between obstructing new growth on one side and the ideals of maintaining a community environment on the other. Our community continues to prepare itself for the unseen. Having grown up in a large city, there's a lot of undesirable things, and I recognize that this vulnerability in many areas at this time. As an example, I submitted the first ordinance against sexual-oriented businesses in 1998. There was none. Without precautions such as this, the unforeseen could be the future. As a candidate with more experience on the dais than any other up here tonight, and a deep-rooted, biblically centered character, I am confident that I will help strike that balance to lead this community into the next era. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Spitter.
Okay, I'm Sharon Pittard. I'm not a politician, and I'm not very articulate when it comes to forums like this, but I am intelligent and I am determined. I got got into politics a couple of years ago when the tax rate went up drastically, and I knew that the citizens needed a voice up here on the dais. So that's why I'm here, and okay, one thing that I think that I've accomplished is I do read the documents that are before me that we get every other week, and I understand them, and I think I've done a fairly good job at representing the people and what they want, because that's what I see my role as, because otherwise you folks won't have a voice in the city government. See, I'm not very good at this, I'm sorry. I think one thing we need to do is continue to hold back on the spending, especially in this low economic time, and wait till the economy recovers. 70% of the debt, 70% of the budget goes towards debt, and I think that's outrageous, but we have no control over it right now, because we have to pay off the debt that we have. So I see that many times almost up.
It's all right, you don't have to use all of it, you can have a little left if you want. Done? Okay. I think next there will be a question posed by Mr. Schock just to the mayoral candidates. Mr. Schock?
Yes, we're going to ask a question of the mayoral candidates. It'll be phrased slightly differently since one of the two is an incumbent. To George Russell, what's wrong with voting for your opponent?
That's a 1 minute
Boy,
question.
Can I have a minute to think about that a little bit? You know, if you are a reasonable man with high ethics, you want the best person that can be in the job. If you feel that your opponent is better than you, then you ought to go for that. And I say that swallowing my words, you know, but it is very, very important that the mayor of this city and the council have the best people for the job are there, and that the ethics of that person is of the highest standard. I gotta ask him that same question.
Now, a question for Mr. Buster.
Slightly different to Mr. Buster. What's wrong with the job the mayor has done?
I think the mayor's done a very admirable job. There's nothing easy about this job. We just go at it differently, and that's probably the biggest difference between us here. I've spent 20 years on Main Street, and I think it's the heart of our town, and I really want to see that emphasis there. So with the comprehensive plan that we've done, with the bridge that's being built, I want to focus on what needs to be done to tie all of those elements together. We have a huge, huge project here that needs to dovetail with the other plans that we've made, and so that's where I want to put my emphasis, because there's really we both share a love for this community, and that's the reason why we're here. So I don't disparage anybody who's ever said it at this point.
All right, thank you. Now I believe there is a general question that will be posed to each of the council candidates. These are also 1 minute responses, please, and you get a warning at 10 seconds.
Here's the question. Do you think changes are needed in the Marble Falls Economic Development Commission, and if so, what are they?
Are you starting?
Mr. Nash.
Thank you. First, I want to tell you guys that was a good answer to that first question. In the Economic Development Corporation, changes are needed. Yeah, I think you need to change continuously. You need to, our economic environments, it's changing every day. We don't know if it's when it's going to improve, how long it's going to take. So I think we need to continuously change and monitor those changes. We need to start with a plan. We need to continually update the plan and make sure we have leaders behind it, pushing it. The EDC needs to be out there regionally looking for for opportunities to help grow this community and bring more businesses here. And businesses may not be ready to move here this year, but they're still out there. They're making plans for 2 to 3 years from now. They may be ready to make a move in 2 or 3 years, so we need to be in a position where we're in front of them and they know that where Marble Falls is here, we're still in business and we're not going anywhere.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ives?
I think the question is quite timely. As a current director for the Economic Development Corporation, I do know that changes are in the wind. I know that changes are being made even now with forming the strategic plan that is very much needed, has been needed for a while. I know that we're also in the process of looking for an economic development executive director. So I know that person, when that person is in place, things will begin to happen at certainly a more rapid rate. I think that there is an excellent opportunity for the city, the EDC, and the chamber to come together as key organizations in the city to do several projects. The 3 top projects that were identified by the public some time ago were the sports complex, the VOTEC school, as well as the visitor center that is proposed. These 3 particular projects will be shining examples of the way that these 3 organizations, as well as others, can come together and work for the best efforts of the city.
Thank you. Ms. Hurst?
Thank you. Yes, EDC does need a change. I was a part of prompting what they're going through this year. Started that a year or so back when my husband and I brought to their attention that they do not have the business strategic plan that the bylaws call for. They were not working on a plan. It was just ideas popping up here or there, and not going to go down that road in the past, but yes, we need a change, and that needs to start with getting the business strategic plan in place. From that plan, you have a vision and you work from there. They also need the right person leading in as their EDC director, manager in that position that has connections, that has the right experience, that knows how to work with the businesses and commerce and bring in their attentions to the area. Bottom line is, yes, EDC needs a change, and it is, as Councilmember Ives pointed out, started in that direction to get that change made.
Thank you. Mr. Rose?
Thank you. Again, the answer is yes. There's change that needs to happen. The EDC, along with the foundation that needs to be built, and it's a long time coming, as candidate Hurst pointed out, there needs to be a mission statement. There needs to be a strategic plan to develop a roadmap of what to do next, and it has not been in place, but it's currently being worked on. There needs to be significant cohesion between the city and the citizens and toward the CIP plan and projects. They can work together with a common goal to get these things to come to fruition. That hasn't happened as of yet either, and will soon happen. The plans that the EDC puts together need to be met with return on investment. Things need to be quantifiable. And I'm all for VOTEC opportunities, but I see them somewhat philanthropic. And while they're good, the citizens of Marble Falls need to return on the investment for the monies that are being spent.
Thank you. Ms. Kerr?
I agree with Jane Marie. I appreciate that she had brought up a year ago that the EDC needs a plan and they need to be working with a plan and not shooting at the hip here and there. I agree with Rhodes that about having a plan, working together with the citizens and the other entities that govern the city. I think it's very important that the appointees is a very important job for the council to appoint. The state gives council the right to change the appointees at any time for any, they don't have to have a reason for that. I think it's, we just need some people that this council could work with, and I think the EDC needs to be going out trade shows and doing a lot more work than what they have been doing. help
Thank you.
this economy.
Do you have audience questions, or do you have another question?
I think we're gonna go to the audience first.
All right, I think we need a little bit of camera change briefly.
Thank you. Beg your pardon. When I learned that the South Star Development Partners, who are now in charge of Flat Rock Development, is the same company that took bankruptcy for the Skywater development, I wanted to see a copy of the complete agreement signed in 2008 between the City of Marble Falls and Flat Rock Springs et al. To ascertain what type of performance bond the developer put up to assure that the city was not building $35 million worth of utility lines to nowhere. Unfortunately, anytime I came across the word Flat Rock, it was in executive session. I looked in the minutes of the EDC, same thing, executive session. I know what an executive session is, and it has a place. I understand that. But my question to the panel is, do you plan to continue the present board's policy of conducting all important business in executive session, or are you going to do the city's business in public so the taxpayers can see where you're spending our money?
You'll each have, beginning with the mayor and going through all the candidates, you'll each have 1 minute on this response. Russell?
Well, I think that the answer is yes and yes. There is a place for an executive session to talk about the things that go into a development agreement or the requirements or so forth in the agreement, because some of those have some priorities or a proprietary is the word that I'm looking for, arrangement. However, once an agreement is put in place that comes out for vote, it ought to be discussed in open session where people can see all of the bits and pieces of that particular agreement.
Thank you. Mr. Buster?
Yes, I agree. Executive sessions have their place, but as much of the city's business as absolutely possible needs to be done in the open. I don't think anything is accomplished by holding back information. So after every executive session, I think there ought to be a summary given, and there may be in the minutes, but there probably could be expanded so that people's viewpoints on the council come out so that we can see what the positions are and how they arrived there. So I would like to see a greater summary given to executive sessions.
Thank you. Mr. Nash?
I think there's definitely a place for the executive session. There's going to be some of that may be governed by municipal law or confidentiality or sensitive information, but as transparent as possible would be the words that I would use for the city governance. The citizens have a right to know as much information as they can and have their opinions heard and be able to look at it objectively with the council and give their opinions at council meetings. So I'd want to see citizens have access to as much information as possible, but still respect the sensitive information that does need to be handled in executive session.
Thank you. Mr. Ives?
Again, yes and yes. Same answers. Yes, we need to conduct much of the city business when it comes to negotiations in executive session where we can confer with attorneys, and that is confidential. But as the mayor explained, we do need to discuss that contract once it's been finalized in open session where it can be fully vetted for the voters. So yes and yes.
Thank you. Ms. Hurst?
Yes and yes.
Good echo here.
I'm a big candidate for transparency in our government, absolutely, but there are places that the executive session is necessary. I would encourage anybody that wants to know more about what goes on that may not be shared or have been discussed in any particular city council meeting to make an open records request. The city is very good at providing anybody that does make that open records request. It's very easy, specifically to the Flat Rock Development Agreement. I've done that, and it is interesting reading. but the answer to your question, and I would love to see a lot of transparency continue and less executive session when it's not necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes?
It was a great question, and if you don't mind, I'd like to expand on it ever so slightly. I served on the council from 1997 to 2003, stepped off to help with my family start business, and but having access to those folks, I was very concerned, as I'm sure you were, when I got wind of what it was going to cost to pay for that infrastructure. And I'm not so opposed to the paying of the infrastructure as long as there's a return on the investment and a reasonable one at that. I have to admit, I made a huge mistake in taking a verbal understanding that there was agreement, hard firm, you called it a performance bond. There was no such thing in place. And the citizens of Marble Falls are paying for that dearly to this day. I will also say that I came back on council successfully, thank you, the last term to try very hard to get our return on the investment. I will say that myself and the mayor and a few others of us have pushed hard as we possibly can to get that return on that investment.
Thank you. Ms. Perry?
Okay, I want to point out that in executive session, there are no votes that are taken. That if the discussion in executive session, if there's any action to be made, it's always done before the people. So that's, I want to make that clear. And when the minutes say that we've discussed it, sometimes it isn't discussed, but it gives the attorney an opportunity, because she cannot bring up any topic unless it's in the on the agenda. So sometimes it's on the agenda, but it's not brought up. So when you see that in the minutes that it's on there, it doesn't mean that we've discussed it, because maybe there's nothing to discuss that week. Okay.
All right, thank you. We have another audience question.
Londa Chandler?
Okay, if you wait just a moment, we need to do the camera thing, Kit.
Yes. Can you go ahead and state your name?
No,
Please.
Londa Chandler. I'll try and make my question quick. I was surprised. At the last forum, they beat budget to death, and it's hardly been mentioned. And I think that's the biggest topic that should be tonight. This town is broke, and we're talking about repairing roads and painting the downtown. I'm appalled, to be honest. What I came to ask about, what I had prepared, was this last little brush cleanup. I called and talked to a nice young man at the Public Works and asked what was the budget for this, and he said, oh, there's no budget, it didn't cost anything to do it. And I said, wait a minute, what do you mean it didn't cost anything? Oh, well, all those people work for us and we own all that equipment. And I said, well, if they weren't cleaning up brush on my mother's street 4 times in the last month, wouldn't they have been doing something else? And he said, oh, yeah, we can always find something for them to do. My husband, who is a construction engineer, does this for a living, guesstimated that this little brush cleanup just cost the town over $42,000. And I think it's a wonderful service if we can afford it. But we could have done it for a week and gone through town at one time. According to the man, we start at one quadrant, work through the next, and then we turn around and go back, and then we turn around and go back, and then we turn around and go back. For 30 days, they have cleaned up brush in front of people's yards at a tune of over $40,000. And I guess my question is, my husband helped me work it out, because I was, as you can tell, I get real annoyed when people throw away my money.
I need to ask you to state your question.
All right. With a $4 million deficit and the knowledge that property values have decreased at least 20% over the last 2 years, I'd like your comments concerning what town services or budgets are or should be evaluated to reduce the cost of local government.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
Kevin, you ready?
I was ready. The first point that was put out there, the city is not in a deficit budget. We're required by law to have a balanced budget. So we are balanced now, and number of the people that were picking up trash and so forth out there, they have job descriptions that have a task like related work as possible, so that you can pull them off of one thing and put them on other things. I did not realize that if you added up all the time, that it would be about $40,000. I would like to go to the front part of the question that you said there regarding budget. Whatever council that is elected, or which one of us you elect as mayor, or whoever you elect as council, the first thing that they need to tackle is the budget. And if we look at our current budget, there's gonna have to be some reductions in that particular budget, and there's gonna have to be some very hard decisions that are made. So the budget is an issue that is first and foremost on just about everybody's mind here about what you do for next year and the year after that, because it is very tight with higher rates. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Buster?
The budget is priority. I've been looking at the police department in particular, and it came about because there was an article in the Austin American Statesman showing Kyle's situation of how much they spend on the police force and their need to deal with growth. We spend about $440 a citizen here. The average of a 9-city regional area is 200 or less. So there's a huge savings that could be made if we were to bring our services down to the level of our neighboring cities. I think that we need to evaluate not only the police department, but all of our services through city, the administrative cost, our courts. I mean, everything needs to be looked at. When things are good, there's a tendency to spend too much money. You think it's not going to end. Well, now we're in the process of reevaluating that, trying to match up what comes in to what goes out. And so I think we need to compare ourselves to our sister cities to get a better perspective.
Thank you. Mr. Nash?
I understand your question. Everything does have a cost, whether it's the folks work for the city or not. There's a cost associated with those type of cleanup activities, and it can be frustrating from an outside view looking in that the city's in financial strain right now and tried to hold the line, but the financial health of the city has to be priority one. We've got to keep the strength of the city up and ready to be able to take advantage of the opportunities we're going to have coming up over the next few years. There's going to be tough decisions, and services like that they'll be looked at in the next budget session, and they may have to be trimmed back and cut. That at the last budgeting process, that evidently wasn't looked at, but the financial health of the city has got to be priority one. It's got to be continuously monitored and maintained.
Thank you. Mr. Ives?
That's such a rich question. There's so many things that need to be pointed out in the items that she brought up, Mrs. Chandler brought up. The first thing I want to bring up is that a lot of this was not helped as far as the budget portion, and the funds being received by the city was certainly not helped by passing the $50,000 homestead exemption that passed. That figure last year was $142,000 that the city lost that particular tax cycle. That figure will only grow, is the projection, as more and more folks turn 65 and take that particular exemption. That gives them a total of $55,000 in homestead exemptions here in the community. That is one huge source of income that was removed from the city coffers.
Thank you. Ms. Hurst?
What services to reduce cost of local government? Very good question, but we're not going to be able to answer that question until we enter the budget cycle, as Mayor Russell pointed out. That will begin immediately after the new city council is met. That is, I would be stating incorrectly if I name something right off the cuff to you, not diving in and learning what that budget is, but it is something to be mindful in going forward with.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes?
Thank you. No question the budget is stressed, and I appreciate David pointing out something difficult to point out, but it's true nonetheless. It's tough. One of the challenges that we have at the city is called expectation. And I'm of the firm belief that city government, in particular we're discussing here, has some very basic functions. Fire, police, water, sewer, expectations, and roads. Beyond that, everything else is frill. And I have voted time and again for those kind of things. First time I came on council, I saw a line item on the budget, it was $2,000, I remember it, very specifically for project graduation from the city. Now, I'm not against project graduation, but the city has no budget from where I sit funding that. And I voted no for that particular budget, for that very reason. It was more of a principle matter. On a practical level, I would say there's a lot of things that need to be looked at and could be looked at. And one of those main things I want to point out is privatization of a lot of these kind of functions that can save us a lot of money.
Thank you. Ms. Bitter.
Oh, that was an interesting thought. Okay. 30% of the city budget goes towards operations and maintenance, which is a lot. It's a small portion of what we pay in our taxes and what we get as revenue. This 70% is going towards debt, and I think that's where the real problem of the city lies, and we need to just work on paying off those loans and holding back on creating any more borrowing. But we can't do that until, because when you have a debt, you have to pay it. That's where our big problem is. I do appreciate the public works for taking care of our city, and whether they're picking up trash or doing something else, they're still getting paid. Now, could they have budgeted their time better or something? Probably so. But we're still going to pay them. They have a certain budget, and that's what they adhere to, and whether they're doing this or that.
Thank you. Need just a moment to reset the camera here as you.
Brett Sachs.
Question.
A wonderful bridge coming in, so the cars can go nice and fast to the bridge and get to a choke point and traffic will not flow anymore. The comp plan calls for a loop going around the city. My question is, do you support a loop going around the city? And if you do, how do you justify it versus hurting the downtown district, trying to get tourists in downtown, trying to get people at the restaurants in downtown or get to the hotels? If you do not support a loop, which is fine, how do you get the traffic moving in town? Thank you.
Mother was calling you, you need to go. Fred, to answer your question, and I can only answer it for myself and from some of the meetings that I've been into with the strategic transportation plan, a loop is needed. But a loop has to be done correctly. You know, you can look at loops going around the cities like LaGrange or whatever type thing, and by putting the loop in, it has killed the downtown district. So there has to be some strategic planning on how you keep getting the traffic to the downtown area and also utilize the loop. But the biggest thing today is the money. The last numbers that I saw for a loop around Marble Falls were somewhere around the range of $130 million or something like that. And we're gonna have to come up with right-of-way cost or land cost to get to that. It is on the books with TxDOT. It needs to be done. And they've actually talked about the terrible road, the word of toll road.
Thank you. Mr. Buster?
I think a loop is something that we'll have to seriously look at, but I think it's 10, 15 years off. It needs to be planned because nothing happens for 10 or 15 years on strategic things like this. In the meantime, the new bridge will help streamline traffic across the river, but then we also need to tie in our secondary streets and our inner loop from 1431 over to 281 across this northwest side, tying in to the high school across the northeast side, and coming from industrial down 2nd Street. Those are all improvements that that are planned, and those need to be implemented, and I think that those will help a lot on the local traffic. And so the quicker that we can get those things done, the better our traffic will be here. But the loop is a big project. It will involve the state and a lot of other planning. So we continue to work on it, but it'll be further out.
Thank you. Mr. Mr. Nash?
I think the loop is a good idea to keep out on the horizon. One of these days, I can envision a loop around Marble Falls, but because of the tremendous cost, difficulty, and complication of putting a loop in around a city like Marble Falls that has a river running through it, and it's going to be something to keep out there on the horizon, to be planning for. But it's right now we need to manage the traffic flows with what we have in our city, and keep looking for the opportunities to plan for it and maybe acquire a right of way. But it's tremendously complicated and expensive. So I see a loop off in the distant future after we have much more growing to do before that would be financially possible.
Thank you. Mr. Rimes?
At this moment, I do not support a loop. I think it would do more detriment and more harm to our city's economy than it would help any traffic situation. It's not gonna happen for 20 or 25 years. I might consider supporting it at that time, heaven help if we're still around, but I support the interloop that Buster talked about, second to industrial, creating the thoroughfare behind Walmart and coming back up to the highway and crossing over to the high school. There's drawings that show that as a possibility. I support that and creating more, what you might call backways for those of us that don't want to necessarily get on the freeway on the highway because we're not going all the way through town. We just want to go from one place to the other within the city. So that's kind of my thought.
Thank you. Ms. Hurst?
Thank you. I do support a loop. It's not going to happen for quite a while. It does take a while to plan. The one thing about doing a loop, though, that is different than other cities is we do have a river to cross. Those bridges don't come cheap, and that will involve more than just the city of Marble Falls. That's going to take a while. The comprehensive plan does point out these additional quarter loops, I call them, on the plan. Those were going to happen much faster than a loop around the city. As Councilmember Ives pointed out, the little back roads, well, in order to do that, we need to maintain the existing roads that we had in our original city. So back to your question, yes, I support a loop. It's going to be a while, and there's more entities that we got to work with in order to succeed in getting that, and it's going to be quite a while down the road.
Thank you. Mr. Rose?
Yes, I would support a loop in a managed fashion. In terms of the choke point, as you point out, the challenge with 281 and the bridge is it's a state highway. We have very little control over it, as you well know. It's going to be a choke point for a long time, and that is a challenge. One of the fears, I was more than 10 years ago on council, and then the subject came up, and the fear of our city having very detrimental impact to the town, the economy, the businesses there was a real fear. And I would say we have a lot of opportunity here right now in the next 10, 15, whatever that's going to be, to use the one largest asset that we have, and that's the lake. If Marble Falls, downtown, if you want to call it that, or the core of our city, if we promote it and use it as a destination, as I believe that we should, then whether there's a loop, people will still come here, they'll still use that bridge, they'll still come to the core of the city.
Thank you. Ms. Bitter?
I would support a loop. I do think it's in the far future because of the economic situation, and it is a TxDOT project. It's not a city, the TxDOT puts in the road. And I agree with Hurst and Rhodes on this, and I think developing Marble Falls as a destination and the beauty of the surrounding areas and the lake and stuff, those are the assets that we can keep people coming here to Marble Falls as a destination once the loop is put in.
Thank you. We have another audience question.
Yes, Mary Ellen Goff?
No, I didn't have a question. I thought Mr. Buster was giving out movie tickets to the Uptown. I didn't realize that this was, okay?
Okay.
You can see him later about those days.
Given, oh, by the way, I'd just like to make a quick comment. Some of my neighbors and I were given the opportunity to meet with the mayor, city manager, and financial director, and I really want to thank y'all for that. I thought it was very enlightening. But for my question, given the state of the economy, like we've all been talking about, and the problems that the federal government, state government, as well as municipality have, I'd like to know how each one of you feels that you could make more of an impact, make more of a difference in these times than the rest of the panel up there that you're sitting with.
Your name, please.
Buddy Pinnick.
Thank you. Mayor Russell.
You know, it's, that's really a difficult question to answer because solutions to these things are not gonna be an I am not gonna do that. The bottom line, I guess, to answer your question is I will try to facilitate a discussion because any changes in the budget or whatever it is has to take a vote and you have to have a majority of the council. So I guess to answer your question, I will facilitate discussions to address those financial issues because there are going to be some extremely difficult issues that are going to have input from more than just council members and the financial people here so that the right decisions can be made as we go forward. Because we're going to have some pretty serious, I don't want to be Mr. Doom and Gloom, but we're going to have to take a look at expenditures over the next couple of years, much more serious than we have in the years past.
Thank you. Mr. Buster.
I want us to learn from our other sister cities, people in the region. I think that when you study budgets of other cities and see what their percentages are and what their funding levels are for different services, then that gives you something to compare your city against. And that's what I'm gonna ask if I get this office for staff to do, is I wanna see how Marble Falls stacks up against every other city in our region that's of comparable size. And see whether we're paying too much for this or that, and what ideas come up. And I think that'll give us a big perspective. And we'll make the best choice we can based on that.
Thank you. Mr. Nash.
I'll tell you that how I would make decisions, and I'm not sure how, speak for the capabilities of the other candidates, but a lot of the things we've talked about tonight are related to development and growth, and my background is in construction and development and engineering. In making decisions, I would try to look at both sides of every issue with a fair, open mind and reach out for the information on both sides of every issue so that you make the best decision possible with all of the information and facts and data that you have, and try to keep the city's best interest at heart all the time and the citizens. And if the citizens have concerns that they want addressed, then Ralph Hendricks is full of information. Meet with him, encourage folks to get involved with the city and come in and participate in city council meetings. I would encourage that. But I think my background and my experience will be very important and help me make decisions that will be good and impacting for years to come if I'm elected to the council.
Thank you. Mr. Ives.
I believe this will very much be a team effort. The current council has worked very closely together. We have come to a meeting of the minds, you might say, on many of the tough issues. While we may not always agree, we do work well together. I can tell you that I would continue to be a conservative voice for fiscal restraint. I do agree with what Sharon has said about the debt. That has to be addressed. That is a major concern. I think until the overall economy turns around and the property taxes begin to property values begin to rise again, I think we're going to face some very difficult situations and decisions in the financial and budgetary arena. So I would bring a conservative voice to the table and continue to do that and work well with the team that's put in place.
Thank you. Ms. Hurst?
I've always been a team player. I'm not an I person. I'm a team player. Although I used I to say that, didn't I? I'm open-minded. One of the things that I feel strongly about is to obtain as much information as I can possible before making any decisions. I think that information is wealth. I believe that there are several different ways to look at a situation, and I invite others' input in that regard. I think if we were all the same, we'd continue to have the same problem. I just believe that I bring a wealth of experience in the different industries that I've been successful in, and the talents that I have learned in those past 25 years.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes?
I would have to agree, having served on council many times, it is a team and a joint effort. I will tell you this. I believe, as I believe that you do as well, stating the question that you stated, that we're in times when the standard playbook doesn't work, or it's not working. How's that? And that creates tremendous challenges day to day, if you will, month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year. And these things have to be assessed. I can tell you this. I have been in situations economically of great success, and I've been in situations of failure. And I've learned a lot more from the failure than I have from the success. I can assure you that I will be a vote and a voice to communicate the hard decisions and the requirement for the expectation that we do need to move forward in beyond a conservative fashion, because we don't know what tomorrow holds. Not that I want to be a doom and gloom kind of guy, but we need to hold on to what we got and work with what we have, not what we think we have.
Thank you. Ms. Bitter?
You can look at my voting record and you'll see that I agree with you, and that you'll also notice that to make the necessary changes, that there needs to be 3 other people that agree with this to sit there on council, because one person can't do it. And just look at my voting record.
Okay, thank you. Just a minute for camera reset. Is Jack Harris?
Question, but Mr. Ives has hit a nerve with me, so I'm going to change from asking about certificates of obligation and bond elections to making a statement and asking each of you a question. I live in a neighborhood, in a very nice neighborhood. There's probably 15 of us in this neighborhood that are retired. The value of our houses are probably somewhere from $8 to $10 million. And Mr. Ives, would this city be better off if we'd have lived somewhere else and not taken advantage of this tax exemption that we got? And you know, I think that retired people living here is just as much of an industry as anything else that you can get. And I'd like to know how each of you feel about this. Thank you.
Mayor Russell?
He was talking today. We have spoke before, and just for the record and let everybody know, I am 65 years old, so I get advantage of this exemption that he was talking about. So the bottom line is, I think that the seniors are entitled to the freeze. I think that they're entitled to an exemption. I have been on record saying that I thought that the $50,000 was too high at the time. I would have personally would have rather seen a phase in of the thing, maybe 25 and then some more. But the people spoke. I mean, it was put on the ballot. This is what the citizens of the city wanted. They felt that they needed, and it's up to us to go forward and utilize that in our budgetary planning.
Thank you. Mr. Buster?
I'm on both sides of that issue. On one side, I probably would have put it off for a while just because because of our financial situation. And so I'm not sure that I would just endorse it entirely. I still think that there's a place for it. I won't be very long. I'll be in that retirement age too, so I'll be looking for anything that's a savings. But in our situation right now, financially, I probably would have postponed it for a while.
Thank you. Mr. Nash?
I think the area is still better off with you. This community in this region is a huge draw for retiring people. There's communities and surrounding communities of this area that are just fully made up of retiring people, and I think they're a great asset. That a lot of them have great experiences that we can draw from. Property taxes are never fun to talk about. You're going to always struggle with that in Texas. You never own your property. You're always going to be paying for it, and that's always going to be a tough issue to deal with. I can respect the folks over 65's opinion that once you're 65 and retired and maybe on a fixed income that you want to lock in, you want to know what to expect year after year on your property taxes. But it is difficult. I think to answer your question directly, we're better off with you here.
Thank you. Mr. Hines?
Before my time begins, Drew, may I ask a clarification question from Mr. Harris?
Go ahead.
You said something about $80 million, are you talking about?
No,
$8 million for your house or for?
No, for the 15 of us that are living.
15 houses making up $8 million.
Do what?
15 houses making up the $8 million.
8 to 10 million.
8 to 10 million. Okay, good. That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Go. First, we are better off for having you here, and I'm glad you're here. Second, I didn't even remember the freeze until George mentioned it, that at 65 your value is frozen, your taxes are frozen. But beyond that, my problem with the homestead exemption is it puts a larger burden on younger families, on everybody else who's not 65 and not getting those benefits. That's the problem I have. If one of 8 to 10 homes is one of, a portion of the $10 million that you're talking about, then those are pretty fine homes. And I'm guessing that those taxes for you wouldn't be as big a burden as somebody else's might be for them when they're raising 3 kids and working 3 jobs.
Thank you. Ms. Hurst?
I aspire to be where you're at. I said, I aspire to be where you're at. I voted for that, and I understand that can be taxing on the rest of the population and taxpayers, but at the same time, there is a balancing act for us all. We've earned it, and we have to be mindful of it, and it exists. We voted for it, we approved it, we move on, and we appreciate the retirement community that is here.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes?
I think part of the sting in that whole thing was when it happened, what happened. I'm really, the retirement community, the retired community adds a tremendous amount to the economic base of Marble Falls and the entire area. It's not that we want you to be here, we need you to be here, and we need to expand that. I would make one encouragement. Marble Falls, the city, the county, we're real microcosms. I would really like to see the 65 and older crowd. You obviously put a lot of effort into that. Take it to Austin. That's where the real change needs to happen. I happen to come from a state where property values, the tax situation was the same way in the 60s and the 70s, and property values were exponentially putting people out of their homes, retired fixed income folks. They passed a bill in 1978 that changed all that and changed the entire state. Take it to Austin, please.
Thank you. Ms. Pittard?
I think that property tax increases affect the nice homes and businesses the most. And I think we need to concentrate more of a positive source of revenue, and that's sales tax. Because when sales tax increase, then that means the businesses are doing well, we're doing well, city does well, and I would just like to encourage that, you know, that I like y'all here too.
Thank you.
This will be the last audience
Judge,
question.
can I have a rebuttal statement, please?
Oh, I think we need to share, we are now at almost 6:45, and I think we just barely have time to get another question in, and then we have some closing remarks.
Carol Calson?
Calson. My name's Carol Calson. I'm a member of the Burnett County Historic Commission. I'm an owner of a home in Marble Falls that has an historic marker. And I just want to get your feel on the importance of historic preservation for Marble Falls.
Mayor Wilson.
Carol, historic preservation is part of the community. You've got to have as much of your history here as you possibly can. That's a fact of life. And you know that I just got back from Savannah, and I saw more history and preservation than I think I need for a whole lifetime. But it is part of it. How it fits into the planning and zoning and all of the other ordinances with the city is where the key comes in. And you know, Austin tried it and they failed by doing tax credits for homes with historical markers, and now that's a big hoorah. So it is something that needs to be discussed, because we quite frankly don't have very many of the historical sites here left. We had a high school student that just recently did a walking of the historical facilities, and she did not have many sites to put on that little tour.
Thank you. Mr. Buster.
I think that history and the preservation go together. We have a very rich cultural base here. I'd love to see us put together a Granite Mountain Museum that would begin to, the Falls of Colorado does their own portion of our historical preservation, but our history is so tied to the railroad and the building of the Capitol. I think it's an opportunity that's in front of us that would work on so many levels, and it would tie the richness of our history together, and something I think that we could build on in so many different areas.
Thank you. Mr. Nash.
I think the historic preservation of the older buildings in town is very important. In fact, I'd like to see more controls put in place so that when we have growth here in the future and some of the buildings are remodeled and cleaned up and new ones built, that we have areas that in 20, 30, 50, 60 years that are worth saving, that are worth having a historical marker placed on 50 years from now. But we've got to have a plan in place to do that. We've got to have controls in place and architectural controls. That really kind of touches the soft spot with me, because I'd love to see Marble Falls become a place that has that's charming, that's interesting, that you just want to be there to look at the buildings and appreciate the history of the town and the community. So I think that's very important.
Thank you. Mr. Rives.
I too would echo what's been said. I think that's very important, and I would support the restrictions that are necessary for the building codes and so forth to reflect the protective nature of some of the structures that are here, and that will be important for the future, just as it is us at this point looking back. It's important to keep our heritage and our history in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hurst.
Carol, thanks for asking a very easy question for me. Being an owner of one of the oldest houses around, built in 1888 by Captain Brant Badger, we cherish that opportunity. We have been good stewards in maintaining it and opening it up at any time. We give tours, and I think preserving the history is very important. We don't have very many, as Mayor Russell pointed out. We don't have very many, and it won't take much to help in preserving that and providing for it to be there for many others, many years from now.
Thank you. Mr. Rose?
I think it can go out beyond preservation. I think of Fredericksburg. A lot of people think of that on the weekends for tourism and Main Street, but the reality is, and having done a lot of business in the same field there, a lot of people they go 2 and 3 blocks off of Main Street because they want to see the preservation of those homes. And it's not that people preserve them just because they wanted to. They have a historical society and an architectural review board that makes sure that those things happen. I brought that up several times over the past council and got shot in the foot several times because it's a burden on a lot of folks, but I would definitely support that. It also adds to the charm of this community and is part of our heritage.
Thank you. Ms. Peter?
I would agree with Dave Rhodes. I love older homes. Before coming to Marble Falls, we lived in Livingston, Texas, and we had a house built in 1910, and I just love that house, even though it got very cold during the winters. I still loved it. But preserving the history of this area, I think, is important, and they brought up a good point about people going to Fredericksburg to rock the cities and look at the houses, and so I think that would be a good thing to preserve.
Okay. You need a camera reset?
Judge, we have one last question before we go back to questions from the internet.
All right.
This will be Shirley Herman.
Yes, I'm Shireen Herman, and I would like to know what each candidate's position is on annexing additional property into the city of Marble Falls before sewer and water services have been provided to already annexed property.
Mayor Wilson?
You know, I think I'm gonna move down and sit on the other side of Sharon. You know, that's really a good point. As you go through the annexation process, there is a period of time that you have to provide the services that go along with annexation. And I know that we have some in the city right now that we are approaching very closely on the time limit as far as providing those services. The textbook answer, and there's other questions that are out there, but the textbook answer is that you need to provide the services to the area before you go forward, because there is a certain amount that you can annex in a 1-year period of time, and there is a certain cost that goes along with any annexation that's out there.
Thank you. Mr. Buster?
I'll agree with George on that. I mean, annexation is something that, it's got lots of sides to it. Their services and the timing are critical. So they have to be matched up. You can't get ahead of your services and your ability to provide them in that time frame. With that said, I think that annexation is a great tool for us to control what our town looks like, and especially the approaches to our town. So without further annexation out there, we don't have the control of what it looks like when we come into town. I don't want to see us turn into a commercial strip that looks like Cedar Park. So with regard to annexation issues that control what we look like, I think those are important.
Thank you. Mr. Nash?
I'd say that if we don't have utility services extended to an area before we annex it, then we need to be very careful to have a plan and funding in place to do that, because in this area, utilities are very expensive to put in. Water and sewer is very expensive. Everyone knows the difficulty in blasting that's often required. And if you don't have a plan and a funding plan in place, that could sneak up on you if you have an economic downturn like we've had over the past few years, because you know, you can get yourself in trouble if you don't want to bite off more than you can chew by annexing faster than you may be able to provide service to.
Thank you. Mr. Rives?
We do need to provide the services to the areas that have already been annexed. Before we move on, I believe, I further believe that we do have plans in place for the two areas that you're probably thinking about, one south and one out to the east. And I know that those are in the works. So, yes, we do need to finalize those before we look further.
Thank you, Ms. Hurst.
I think we did a lot of annexing in the past couple of years, and I think we're okay at the moment. I don't think we have a need to annex any further until we take care of what we have. We have an original city that needs continuing streets and infrastructure maintained. Those properties that have been annexed, yes, they need to be followed through with and provided the infrastructure that were in the service plan and the ordinance when they were brought about. If not, they need to be allowed to be annexed. Generally, the city will not annex unless they do have a plan in place and go forward. But to answer your question, do I think they should annex before they give services to those that annexed already? As long as there's a plan in place and the time and place is right, we just need to be mindful of what we commit to before we commit to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes.
The current state law allows city municipalities 30 months to bring those utilities. I'm still in favor that is a reasonable policy for the city, although I would be more than happy to even author an ordinance that says that within those 30 months or in that window of time, funds need to be budgeted and or even escrowed, if you will, so that those services can be provided. I would say this, and it's already been echoed here a little bit, we have a whole core of our city without annexing that needs a lot of revitalization and can bring a lot of revenue, taxes, but without having to go outside of our city. Infrastructure already exists, water, sewer, streets in most cases, it's already there, and that needs to be looked at first.
Thank you, Ms. Beard.
Annexing is expensive, and I think in this economic times, we should be holding off on annexing right now until the economy recovers. I think that the council has inherited some problems from pre-2008 councils, and it takes a long time to fix things that have occurred.
Thank you. Need a reset here, I think. Phil, I might point out it's almost 7, and it'll take 15 minutes.
Be done to improve the appearance of Marble Falls and make it attractive as a tourist destination, and how would you specifically do it?
Mary?
Oh, I'd go out and get me a crystal ball and wave a wand over it. Marble Falls has so many very beautiful assets that we quite frankly are not taking advantage of. The lake and leading up to Main Street, and I guess the answer to a lot of the cleaning up Marble Falls and the presentation, there's a lot of it we can't do anything about. 281 through the center of town, there's not much that you can do with it other than doing some green space on the thing. But the downtown master plan is looking at trails. They're looking at enhancing the lake, bringing in some more properties. But it's going to take a number of organizations working together to do it. The city can't do it. The city plan cannot do it in the economic times that we're in right now. But if we band together and come up with some collaborative, efforts between various organizations, and I'm going to share right now, and I'm a member of the International City County Management Association, and this month's issue is shared services and cost-saving collaboration and the benefits thereof type thing. And that's the way we're going to increase the Marble Falls as far as beauty.
Thank you. Mr. Buster?
I guess I was going to use this as my closing remarks, but my vision for downtown I call Tausburg. Austin, Taos, Fredericksburg. All those have very strong elements that I'd like to see us emphasize and implement. Certainly Austin with Town Lake and Lady Bird Lake, the hiking bike trail are the type of thing that we could work here. This could happen on our shoreline and up our creeks and make it such a better facility for our citizens as well as for our visitors. The Taos end of it is history and rustic and art in a nice environment. The Fredericksburg, the Berg part of it is Main Street and keeping up our streets and keeping up the value of our improvements. We have lots of town that is undervalued and it needs to be redeveloped, and we need to create incentives to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Nash?
I think there's the things we're hitting on is that we need to improve the charm of Marble Falls, and a lot of that ties directly to a question we had earlier, historic preservation and architectural controls. And a lot of that's being directed towards Main Street, but I wouldn't want to see an opportunity missed on even 281, which is definitely the most visible corridor of the city, that in the next 10 to 15, 20 years, there's going to be a lot of redevelopment even of that area, that a lot of the older buildings are going to be torn down and replaced or remodeled and updated. And if we put architectural controls in place now that the city buys into, everyone buys into that, and we do that, it may cost us more. We may not have as much redevelopment, but what we do have may be better. Then in 30, 40, 50 years, we'll have what these other communities that are being mentioned have. We'll have that charm. We'll have a place that is interesting to be in, that respects our history, and that is you can appreciate.
Thank you. Mr. Ives?
Just as the comprehensive plan was an important document to follow, the downtown master plan is going to be equally as important. It not only identifies Main Street, but it identifies the downtown district as a core district. And it will give boundaries to that, and it will give qualities for each particular quadrant or area of that particular boundary zone. So I think once that's in place, I think we use it as a roadmap like we do the comprehensive plan. I think we continue to build on our key asset, which is the lake. I mean, everybody knows the lake is our big draw. So I think the hike and bike trails, all those type things, ultimately developing a convention center type affair with a hotel down on the waterfront will be a big thing as far as tourism. So I think all of those things working together with the entities that we have in place working together will be providing the best future for the city.
Thank you. Ms. Hurst?
I think we all agree that our lake is one of the biggest assets amongst other things historically, and the environment we have here. The comprehensive master plan, we worked very hard, and it outlines a lot of the assets and a lot of the ways that we can enhance our environment, from little things to big things. But it is very important to know that the city can't do it by itself. City, the EDC, the chamber, and special interest groups, we all need to work together in order to maintain these ideas and visions that we have laid out in this comprehensive master plan. And further, with regards to the downtown master plan that comes up too. I'm a big proponent of sticking to that comprehensive master plan. It lays out a lot of things. But hitting on the architectural, that is one of the things planning and zoning needs to get on immediately to update that so that we can have things in place as our city grows.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes?
All these things are absolutely important, well pointed out, but I think they miss. We have a huge core of the city. This was a twofold question. One was beautification and one was tourism as a destination. We have ordinances in place, and this is painful. We have ordinances in place that are not being upheld, and that means change from folks, a lot of those have lived here a long time, and that's tough. I'll use the word push for lack of a better word, and we get a lot of pushback, and those kind of things need to be understood. What is the ultimate goal here? And that change comes hard, it comes difficult, but we need to have a will and see that kind of thing through. The second thing that was talked about before is Marble Falls as a tourism, as a destination. We've spent a tremendous amount of money, and we'll continue to do that through the Hotel Occupancy Tax Fund to continue to advertise, if you will, Marble Falls as a destination. It needs to create an identity.
Thank you. Ms. Bitter?
That was a huge question, and I would summarize, my ideas would be, cost-effective projects. I don't think we need to be getting it in big, projects right now. Cost-effective to encourage Marble Falls as being a destination. I think, having planning and zoning, updating what, Jane Marie was talking about, I think that's very important too.
Okay, we're gonna, I think we'll go to closing here in a second, Judge. Let me just point out to the audience that early voting begins May 2nd through the 10th. On Saturday, May 14th, and I still don't know why they want to have voting on Saturdays, because the turnout's even lower there, Roy, than it is on Tuesdays. Will be on May 14th. You'll be electing one of these two gentlemen for mayor, and you will be electing 3 of the 5 people running for the council seats. So I'll turn it back over to you, Judge.
All right, you'll have 2 minutes for your closing. Drew will give you first a signal when you've used 1.5 minutes, and then a final one when you have 10 seconds to go. Mayor?
Well, first of all, I love these forums to have discussions. I've had the privilege of meeting with a number of folks here lately, and keep in mind that anything that the council or the mayor works with is your money. And what we need to do is to do the best thing for the community at large. Not just one special group, but the community as large. What is the best for that? So I need to emphasize the fact that this community, once again, is going to face some very complex issues and challenges with our hands tied behind us. If you look at our property tax rate of 60-something cents, 70% of that is debt service, so we could shut down the entire city and you'd still have a property tax rate of 45 cents. So there are some handicaps that we have as far as some of the reductions. But we've got complex issues and challenges in the form of transportation, water, wastewater, budget, growth, and development. But these are no different than any other city. Whether a city is successful or fails depends upon the leadership and the way they address the issues that come before them. And I just would like to add in closing, I understand these complex issues. I feel that I have the knowledge, the experience, and the network of people to talk to about issues, because there are no new problems in the city. There are just new ways to solve problems in the city. And the time and the willingness to serve as mayor. And in one closing thing, I just want to thank you for the honor and the privilege of serving this community as mayor for the last 2 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Buster?
I would like to take this opportunity, if I'm elected to be mayor, to follow up on the momentum that we have here in our community. It's been a long time project. I've worked on it for 20 years. The reason why I really got into this is I want to put a little bit more emphasis on this. A lot of these issues have been here for 20 years, so it's time to get some things done. I really do want to take a little bit more of an aggressive approach with downtown, especially when the bridge is being redone and we have these chance to tie these things together. So I want to emphasize the completion and the implementation of the downtown comprehensive plan in conjunction with the new bridge construction. I also want to investigate every possibility to save the city millions of dollars by utilizing the EDC facilities over here at Gold Circle for a possible police and fire station in conjunction with the VOTAC school. And I think that those things can be compatible, and that's how we can move things along and make progress on both of those points. A couple other things is I'd like to promote a tourist train that runs from Granite Mountain west of here. I think that it just represents so much of what we, of our history pursue a dark sky ordinance to restrict excessive nighttime lighting. I think that we are a small town, and it'd be nice if it felt like a small town. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nash?
Excuse me, a few of the things that I'd just like to emphasize in closing is that I am a lifelong resident here, and I have the city's best interest at heart. I have a background in construction, development, and building business is a very, very big part of this community in the region here. I'm the past president of the Building Industry Association of the Highland Lakes. And I think that those experiences there and in business will serve me greatly if I'm elected to this council. And in that business, you have to work with the city a lot. We spend a lot of time in the hallways of the city working with city officials and zoning and ordinance regulations and building permits. So I do have experience working with city government. I'll be a fair, open-minded candidate that makes decisions based on facts after reviewing both sides or all sides of an issue, and we'll try to make decisions that are best for the city and that will be part of a long-term plan that will be very impacting for years to come. I'll be very open for citizens. If they have questions or comments or want to know more about what's going on at council, I wouldn't hesitate to have a conversation about it. So I would appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Mr. Ives?
Again, I want to thank Roy Bodie and the staff at the Highlander for sponsoring this, as well as Paul Brady and the River City Grill. And thanks to each and every one of you for attending tonight. It's because of citizen involvement like this that we are able to understand what it is the citizens want and can be responsive to that. This has not only been a great exchange, but I think you have seen where each particular candidate will stand. I think you found that I'm a conservative, that I will continue to stand as a conservative, and will continue to hold the fiscal line, and will continue to make good decisions for smart growth. We do have some tough decisions coming because of economics in the near future, but I see a horizon. I see the sun coming over the horizon. I see a brighter day in the very near future. I think we're right on the edge of some really, really great things happening in our community and in this area. The hospital will be coming soon. I think there's just a lot of good things that are going to be happening in this particular community in the near future. I very much appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this forum and to have served the last 2 years. I would appreciate your vote and would like to serve the city another 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hurst?
Thank you. I believe that my 20 years of experience in the real estate and legal industry, along with the successful businesses that I have started and been involved with, bring a lot in my experience to contribute should I be elected to the city council. I want to be a positive team player in the leadership of the city for improving and maintaining existing roads and parks, new development of reasonably priced housing, and supporting and encouraging economic development. In this regard, we need to embrace change and growth by effective planning. I underscore that planning is very important, along with efficient budgeting and disciplined spending. We need to build on these successes and focus on the health and safety of our community economically and otherwise. Although we have some tough budgeting issues, the potential of accomplishments and the positive outlook for our city are endless. Growth will happen. It is up to us on how we allow it all to happen. Embrace change, careful planning, and helping others is how we will enrich our community to improve the local quality of life physically, environmentally, and economically. As most would agree, tourism is a contributing factor to the city's economy. Therefore, we need to be mindful of the decisions we make in that planning, what it affects us 1, 5, and 10 years from now. The 2007 flood spurred the importance of planning and preparedness in protecting the community and its assets, and the negative economic results received when we don't plan. We need to continue to improve and maintain our community's assets of the lake, creeks, park, hike and bike trails, the Main Street, downtown district, and historic areas, including revitalizing the original city areas and, importantly, the maintenance of our streets. thank y'all very much for your support in voting for me.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes.
In closing, I would again like to thank our hosts. There are many times in a community when the community reaches a crossroads, and I believe this is one of those times. I know that we're currently in an era when it is tempting to discard the experienced and embrace the unknown in hopes of something better. I'm here tonight asking the voters of this city to recognize that this is a time to embrace experience. Experience with a plan, experience with a purpose. I can't and I won't make promises that I cannot keep. I will, however, pledge fiscal responsibility and will continue to be a hallmark of my voting record. I will continue to work with the staff and the council to explore any and all ways and opportunities, known and unknown, to pull this city back into fiscal health. I will continue to work from the dais and behind the scenes directly with the entities involved with the completing of a hospital project as a cornerstone of our community to bring jobs and sustain infrastructure to our community. I will work diligently to find ways inside of our budget and within the community to not only uphold but to uplift the standard and the quality of life inside Marble Falls.
Thank you. Ms. Peter.
I would like to encourage everyone to vote and encourage your friends to vote. With such a low voter turnout, your vote does matter, it does count, and it's very important that we get some like-minded people on council that agree with your what you like. And I'd like to read Jean Marie's notes, her closing statement. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Before I turn it back over to Highlander, ladies and gentlemen, those are your candidates. Let's give them a round of applause for their participation. Mr. Bodie.
I think everyone here would agree with me tonight that it's a shame that we only have the opportunity to place 3 of these people on the council and 1 mayor. But it also brings to mind the same question I had after hearing the candidates for school board earlier this month, which was, when we see candidates like this in local elections who have common sense, who approach problems as people who are experienced in small business and experienced in community life, why don't we have more of them in Washington, D.C.? Thanks to everybody who came in to participate in the panel, all of these good candidates. Thanks to everyone who came here tonight to hear them. Thanks to the judge. Thanks to Drew Crosby. Thanks to the Highlander people who helped us to present this evening. As you've noticed during the event tonight, we've done some filming. This will all be on video on the Highlander website, which is www.highlandernews.com. And of course, we'll have election news and community information at all times in printed form in the pages of the Highlander. We're a printed newspaper, we'll always be one. And I encourage you to, if you don't subscribe, to pick up a complimentary subscription for a time and try us out. They have them at the door. Thanks again for coming, and go vote next month.
So if you'd like to take a bottle of water with you, please do. It's over here in the corner.
Come on, Gil, use the gavel once. Come on, hit